Hey guys, welcome to Have and to Roll. My name's Robyn, and this here is Oliver.
Hi, how you doing?
And and today we are going to be chatting all about our D&D origin stories.
Origins of the podcast, because we've started a podcast. This is it. This is the podcast.
So later when we do our podcast origins, we'll be discussing this, our origin to our podcast.
Well, I'd like to actually talk about a bit about that because what was the main inception for this podcast, Robyn?
Well, I know you're asking it, Oliver, but you're probably better answering because you are most definitely the one who wanted to go ahead and do a podcast. So, Oliver, as a person who is into a lot of podcasts, why did you want to start a podcast?
I'm way more the consumer of podcasts than you are, right? You're not
Definitely.
really a big podcast listener. I just listen to a ton of podcasts just driving around at work or when I used to drive around a lot for work, because it's you can only listen to so much radio, and then when podcasts start and become a big thing, I started listening to a load of nerdy podcasts, other things that I'm interested in. One of the podcasts being like Critical Role, and
I think I've heard of that. Yeah.
it's a little known. It's a little known Dungeons and Dragons podcast, and I think the main point where I was like, we should just do this. We should just make a podcast. Or this was way before we started streaming. The podcast was always supposed to be the first thing we did, but we ended up streaming first, like way before.
Yeah, same. I mean, we discussed doing a podcast first, and we're like, yeah, if we do the podcast, then after a few episodes, we'll get into the swing of it and we can start our stream journey. But we just hit the ground running and went straight in for the streaming, didn't we?
Yeah, and it's just trying to find the time to just sit down and record one. We had thought we might do it on stream, right? But then we tried to do it on stream, but it was difficult not interacting with the chat. So I think we're going to be try and release one of these podcasts just with us chatting about things, at least once a week, and we'll see how they go, and then we'll plus the live chats as well. We might release like the live chats on Twitch in podcast form as well to go along with this. But yeah, I think it was mainly us just walking the dog in the mornings, wasn't it? And just talking about cosplay and D&D and LARP.
Just everything, yeah.
Yeah, and just everything, just pop culture, geeky culture, the things that we're both interested in, our thoughts, and we were walking the dog. And yeah, it was usually like a good half an hour to an hour of us just talking about this stuff. And I was like, this is literally a podcast. When I said to you we should make a podcast, and you were like, well, what on? I think you had recommended I do like a podcast on like my job, and I was like, not really. I don't really. I prefer to talk about something I actually enjoy talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally fair enough. It got to the point where our morning walks with the dog and our conversations were just covering so many different nerdy fandoms, and it just got to that point where we realized that a lot of people would probably enjoy listening to that, but also engaging with that content. And we discussed a lot of different things that we thought should be around for the D&D community and the cosplay community and everything else. So we thought, bring this to you guys. Hopefully we can answer some questions and entertain you as we do that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, yeah, maybe. Yeah, but we're going to be talking. We're going to be kicking off mainly with Dungeons and Dragons. We want to cover quite a few things in our podcast, and I would like to have it so we release something pretty regularly. I would like a weekly podcast, but we're going to start out with talking about Dungeons and Dragons, because that seems to like envelop our entire lives at the minute.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I think that's where the jump off content is, and we've started. I mean, we've started our own brand, haven't we, Robyn?
Yes, we have.
What's the name of the brand?
Our own brand is To Have and To Roll.
To have and to roll. We're gonna have
To have and to roll.
We'll have to come up with a little jingle as well for the podcast, I think. So what are we going to be? What's our main aim with this branding then, Robyn?
Well, our main aim is we wanted something that included both of us. We are a married couple who are into a lot of different nerdy things, including LARP, cosplay, Dungeons and Dragons, and pretty much all forms of roleplay. So we thought it would be a good idea to include that within the branding with this to. And the to have and to roll, well, it's a good way of including marriage vows with a little splash of Dungeons and Dragons and roleplay.
Yeah, la-di-da.
La-di-da.
Also, drinking beer is another one of our passions, which we may, I don't know, we may have that on the podcast. We may talk about craft beer. Why not?
Oh, that would be good. Yeah, craft beer, the brewing process, which is really interesting actually. We could brew some beer, make some meat. The possibilities are endless.
Yeah. So why don't we give people a little bit of a background then on yourself, Robyn, and myself. Let's pretend I'm interviewing myself and you. So were you into geeky things before you met each other?
Yes, but I think I would describe myself as a closet nerd before I met Oliver. I was definitely a complete closet nerd. I was very much like, no, I'm not into that. I'm into going out and partying and staying out at the weekend. I would totally not want to stay inside and watch nerdy films. What about you, Oliver? Were you into many nerdy things before meeting myself?
Well, shit, yeah. I I think I've always been into kind of geek culture. I think especially just absorbing that type of media. I think mainly video games would have been the main one, I guess. I was into, obviously your usual platformers, but I got into games like Final Fantasy. I got into anime pretty early on as well. I think I really started into anime around about kind of the age of 11. There wasn't back in, I mean, we're talking like back in the year 2000, 2001. There wasn't really much in the way of anime in the United Kingdom on the television. We got a thing on Cartoon Network. I think it was Cartoon Network X or something.
Yes, it was something like that.
Yeah, and they had Dragon Ball Z, they had Tenchi Muyo, they had Gundam Wing. Way previous to that, I've been into fantasy, which kind of leads into will kind of lead into my Dungeons and Dragons later obsession, way later in life. I was always into fantasy literature. In fact, it was the only literature I actually had any interest in. I remember that one of the earliest things I can remember is reading some books by an author called Brian Jacks, and it was about British woodland creatures. It was like a furry style fantasy esque kind of thing, very Tolkien-esque. It was all about legends, very Arthurian as well. And it was a large series of books, and it was written for kind of young adults and younger. I remember really being into them. And then when well, it would have been when the Lord of the Rings came out. That's when I remember just being full on, realizing at school that I was definitely in that world of geekdom. And after that, yeah, comics never really captured my imagination. Only when obviously the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films came out. I guess I was so into that, the X-Men films at that point. And then I kind of drifted away. I kind of drifted away after I left school. I went to college. I went and got off to get a trade, and that took up a lot of my time. And the job I was doing, I was going out and shoeing horses. So that took, not only did it take a lot of my time up, I was outside a lot. I was never really in. I couldn't really afford to buy video games or buy movies or anything like that. Go to conventions. I don't even know if there was conventions around at that point. Yeah, and then, but yeah, I would always kind of slide back into it, go back and watching, like, Stargate SG-1. I remember that was what I spent my money on when I was an apprentice. I used to spend my money on the Stargate SG-1 DVDs. I used to sit and watch them. I think in my later years of my apprenticeship, I managed to afford a PlayStation 3, and I started getting back into video games. And then I met Robyn here.
Yeah. I feel like you've given a much more detailed answer than I did, apart from me just being like, yeah, closet geek. Then
yeah,
you
can tell which one of us listens to podcasts, right?
I did not understand the assignment there. Okay. So yeah, fine. In that case, when I was a kid, the first sort of nerdy things I was really into was X-Men comics. I used to collect X-Men comic books and X-Men action figures. And I hate the fact that those are probably binned a very long time ago, because
oh, wow, yeah.
I had this Storm figure and I just loved her. She was my absolute favorite. Apart from that, I was super into building Lego. I had so many Star Wars Lego kits, and when all the Harry Potter Lego came out as well, I had all of them. It was I remember having the bus set up on my desk underneath Star Wars spaceships held up by like fishing line or something like that in my room when I was a kid.
Right.
I wish I'd kept all of those. But
yeah, I had a lot of Lego too. I wish I'd kept it. I was, to be fair, the Lego that I collected when I was kind of early teens was all Lego Technic. It was all Lego Bionicle, which I don't think is worth that much these days. Not like the old school.
Rising a bit now.
Oh really? Well,
yeah, I listened to it the other day actually. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. I think I have. I don't have any of it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, yeah, that's what I was super into. And then I remember when Lord of the Rings came out, I was in primary school at the time. And when Lord of the Rings came out, I was completely obsessed. But it was around about that time where maybe a year after the Fellowship came out is when I would have gone to secondary school. And that's around about the time where I started hiding how into all these things I was into, because I was maybe known as a little bit of a weirdo in primary school. I was the one that played with Lego and obsessed over Lord of the Rings. And I wanted to create a new sort of image for myself, because that wasn't cool in secondary school.
What age do you go to secondary school? For our international listeners.
In 12. So I would have just turned 11 when Lord of the Rings came out. So that came out. I had one more year left of the sort of primary school or junior school. And then when I turned 12 and went to secondary school, that's when I decided to hide all of that stuff in the few boxes in my room and make my room look a little bit cooler. And that was okay for a while, but I was always more into Lego and comics and Lord of the Rings than anything else that all of my friends were into. But luckily, as time went on and I got a bit older, I realized that I could still display all that. And I'm pretty sure when you and I met, Oliver, I'm pretty sure I had Lord of the Rings posters up in my room.
Yeah.
Amongst other things. And yeah, then I met you.
Yeah, so we met what, like 2011, didn't we? We actually met up.
2010 is when we met.
Well, we met,
So
but we didn't meet up, right?
We met up in 2010 in the December.
All right, okay.
That's when we first met. Because remember, I was meant to meet you a little bit earlier, and I got into an accident in the snow and had to delay it a couple of weeks.
Yeah, what an excuse, right?
It wasn't an excuse. It was genuine. I mean, sure. I met up with you.
Sure, Robyn, hold that thought, because we're currently living in the same house, and I can hear you twice. So hopefully, that hasn't been picking up on the mic. Give me 2 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Right, we're back.
Yay!
Yeah, so that was 2011, right? I think about that time, that was at the stage where it wasn't like that kind of culture, the geeky culture wasn't anywhere as mainstream. I don't want to start going into this whole like, oh, it was, we liked it before it was cool. What I mean is like 2011, like 2010, 2011, that's kind of when the first Iron Man film came out, and that kicked off like this Marvel Cinematic Universe. Game of Thrones was starting to come out kind of a little bit after that, wasn't it? The next kind of couple of years after. There was a lot of things bringing people into that geekdom. A lot of people that were never really into that type of thing, and it's not an unusual thing to be into those things anymore. I don't think, is it?
Oh, definitely not. So I work in schools. I work in secondary schools, and in secondary schools, if you want to be cool and popular now, you are up to date with Marvel. You are up to date with every series that Marvel and DC brings out. You play Dungeons and Dragons. You understand Magic the Gathering. You are into all of these things. This is what all the popular kids are now into in the schools where I work. And it's wonderful. Honestly, sometimes I think we were born a little early.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But I think it's all to do with the internet, right? Because like I said, when I was watching anime, we were like years behind where Japan was, and then you had these like anime super fans that would obviously get these tapes, and they would have fan subtitled tapes and things like that they people just subtitled themselves. They just translated themselves. And they were obviously difficult to hold because they were literally on tape, so unless you knew someone with them, you weren't seeing them, and it wasn't like now where you can just go online and stream anime whenever you want. And there's also communities, right? So this is kind of coming back around to what we're starting to do. We're building. It's so easy to build communities now, and find people that are into the same thing that you're into.
Yeah, exactly. It's just so easy to find people anywhere in the world. I think that's what's really insane at the minute. When we were teenagers, we could connect with people around the world. We had social media, but just not to this scale, not to the scale where no matter what you're into, there is someone out there who is also into it. There's probably thousands of people out there who are into it, and you can connect with them all really easily. And coming back around to Dungeons and Dragons, that's what makes a game like that so important, because you can literally connect with anyone around the world and play any type of Dungeons and Dragons game you want, and you can make all these wonderful friends whom you may never actually meet in person. But I don't know about you, Oliver, the friends that we've made on the other side of the world through Dungeons and Dragons, I feel like I know them in person because we're just so close, even though we've only seen one another through a Zoom call.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, no, that's the thing. I would like to tell everyone kind of the after origin as well of after we met, because we didn't get straight into Dungeons and Dragons. It was a long time before we got into Dungeons and Dragons, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, I actually remember the day when we, not Dungeons and Dragons, but when we both actually started embracing that nerdy side again together. And it was a day when we were in Scotland and we were walking down the high street and noticed that a comic book shop was opening. And we had that moment of, oh, look, a comic book shop. Should we go inside? And then we realized that we both loved it. And the person who owned the shop introduced us that day to Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, yeah. Magic the Gathering was something that I had played in school, only kind of dabbled in it. When we talk about how we got into D&D, I'll come back to that bit. But yeah, I hadn't played Magic the Gathering for a while. But yeah, I remember that comic book shop opening up, and that was like the start of this. Like, if you wanted a comic book shop in the UK, you had to go to one of the main your capital cities, to actually find a comic book shop. There was like Forbidden Planet. There was a chain franchise in a lot of cities, but being in the smaller towns, it was quite unusual for there to be a comic book shop opening up. And I remember it was that kind of time where Marvel was that would have been like 2012 kind of time. That was when the Avengers movies had like come out, and like it was starting to become, this is like a wider universe, and they had like the TV show Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. out, and people were just really into comics again, and it was but I think definitely now anyway, a lot of comic book shops have diversified, if not just got completely rid of comics and moved into tabletop gaming, because that seems to be where they make their money because of the community aspect of it. And I think Magic the Gathering, that's one that definitely is like that, right? So Magic the Gathering,
definitely.
We started playing a lot of Magic the Gathering, didn't we, you and I?
Yeah, so we started playing lots of it, and slowly getting into it. We started collecting them and playing. This was when would have been around about 2013-ish, because I remember us sitting there playing it, and then we decided to go to our first ever Comic-Con around about that time as well.
That's right. Oh, yeah, I remember I watched I was actually looking at a graphic novel just online that I had seen in the comic book shop, and I was just like browsing through Google looking at comic books. I never really got into comic books from that, but I was like, I had in my head, I might actually like to get into comic books. And I saw a YouTube video from London MCM Comic-Con, which had taken place the year before. And it was someone going to the artist of this comic book, and I'm like, they have a Comic-Con in London. This is how out of touch I was with the geek community at that point. And yeah, I looked up MCM, and I looked up MCM, and this was in the morning, and I was like, there's a Comic-Con in Scotland. It's like first year. There's an MCM Comic-Con in Glasgow. It's on today. Shall we go?
Along, and I know it was definitely 2013 because Aria, our Rottweiler, was a little puppy. She was just a little puppy, maybe a month and a bit old. Well, no, she would have been about 2 and a bit months old.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, yeah, we're just heading to Glasgow. She'll be fine for a little bit. We'll settle her down with her toys, and we'll head to Glasgow, and we'll have a wander around.
Little did we know.
So.
Little did we know.
Oh my gosh, we were so unprepared.
Yeah, we got there. Luckily, it was a nice day, right? But the queue was crazy long,
and we
had no idea how long like we had nothing to compare it to, so we were like, oh, I guess we just stand and wait. But yeah, we were waiting for like a good 2 or 3 hours, right, to get
I'm
in.
sure it was close to 3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. So by the time we got in, we were absolutely exhausted, and that's the first time we saw like people in cosplay before we knew what cosplay was. We were just like, oh, we just thought they were people that worked for the convention, and there were people like mildly dressed up as well. But that was way before we had considered cosplaying. But that was our
Oh
first
yeah.
that was our first Comic Con experience, wasn't it? We went and looked around and went, oh, this is really cool. I love all this, but we were so tired. We spent 4 hours waiting to get in, and then an hour in there, and they were like, right, let's go home now.
Yeah, we were, let's go home. We need to check on Aria. So yeah, we headed home, and I mean that was it for a while actually. We obviously carried on playing Magic the Gathering, but that was it until we actually moved to Aberdeen. I don't think we were into too much else before then, unless I'm missing something.
No. We moved, and I was still, in fact, because I was playing a lot of Magic the Gathering then, because I didn't have any friends, and I was like, this is a good way to make friends, because we'd moved up into a brand new area for my work, and yeah, it was a good couple of years of that, because the next thing we went to was in 2016.
15.
Was it 15?
2015.
Oh, so it was only a couple of years later then.
Yeah. So 2015, I started working at a science center. And when I started there, and in my interview, we got onto the topic of a lot of nerdy things. And they said to me in an interview, oh, the building across the road is having its first ever Comic Con next weekend. And I was like, oh no, it was maybe like a couple of weeks away. And I was like, oh, awesome. And I remember saying to you, and we're like, we should go this time. And I said, oh, well, I want to dress up and go in costume this time, because people had costumes on before.
Well, it was the first time they had run that convention ever, and it was just a few guys went, oh, we'll run a convention because these are getting popular, and we think Aberdeen needs one. And yeah, the response they got was unbelievable. We had already known though, hadn't we? We went, oh no, we'll get there.
We were like, no, we're not gonna make that mistake again.
We'll get there early. So we got there early, but there was people that just didn't get in for the whole day, was there?
We got there super early, and we were still queuing for a very long time. They just didn't realize how many people were going to come, and the reason the queues took so long is the venue wasn't big enough to hold everyone. So they ended up having a one out, one in sort of system going, which for those of you who have been to Comic Cons in the past, usually you stay for the whole day. So that takes a while. I know they did end up bringing a lot of things outside to try and accommodate for those who were outside the building, but that was our first, or my first taste of cosplay, at least.
Yeah, so Robyn, you came home and you were like, oh, I'm going to dress up. And my response was, what, are you going to dress up? What?
It's a total weirdo.
Really? Yeah, that's how I used to be. I was like, really? You're going to dress up? And yeah, I don't know what possessed you. You just went, yeah, I'm totally going to dress up.
I'm going to paint myself green, and I'm going to make a costume and go.
Yeah, so Guardians of the Galaxy was like the hottest Marvel film that had just come out, right?
Yeah. And I loved Gamora, so I decided I am going to be Gamora. And that first convention for us, Oliver, was incredible because we met so many people. We met a friend of ours, a photographer, who gave me my first insight into taking photos, because I got there and people were like, can I take a photo of you?
Yeah, we were like,
I had no idea how to take a photo.
I remember that
okay.
As soon as you came through the door, the person went, oh, because they were just grabbing people in cosplay. And there were so many people in the same shoes as you, though, because a lot of people this was their first ever convention, because conventions weren't widespread at that point. So people have come for the first time, especially being in the way north of Scotland, where no one had been to like London or anything like that. So everyone was like, "Oh, this is my first time," and then a lot of the people taking photos, it's the first time they'd seen any of it. And yes, I remember that person asking you for a photo, and me just holding your bag, and you just looking at me, just being like, "What do I do?" And
What do I
I was like,
do?
"Pose." I don't know.
Oh, I was so clueless and so nervous as well. But the actual photographer was doing photo shoots and
Yeah,
he was like,
professional
yeah,
photographer.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, the professional photographer, it was there. And he pretty much was like, came up to me and he said, okay, copy what I'm doing. He showed me how to, even just simple things, like how to hold my arm out from the side slightly and down so that it created the right look for the character without being like this. Really simple things that I had never heard of. And well, that man ended up being our wedding photographer years later. So it was a pretty good friendship we made there.
Yeah, there was
We
several
met a lot of
people.
people.
Yeah, there was several people that were at our wedding that were actually at the same con. Not all of them we actually met on that day though. Later on, we found out that they were there also.
Yeah.
But that convention, it opened up that whole world to us, and because you were in cosplay,
Mm.
that was the thing, wasn't it? That made you make so many us make so many friends all at
Honestly,
once,
yeah.
right? Because there were other people. There were obviously people grabbing you, being, oh, let's take a photo. But then obviously the other people who were into the same stuff and or were in cosplay too would walk up to you and be like, oh yeah, I love your costume. Where you guys from? Are you from Aberdeen? Are you from? And that it was just such a great friend making, like networking thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I met one of my closest friends there, Kelsey. I met her there and she was the same as me. She was like, oh, I've never done this before. And she was in a Raven from Teen Titans costume. And she said, I just made this. I'm not too sure. And I was like, oh, I just made this. I'm not sure either. And we ended up wandering around together, looking completely clueless and lost. And yeah, we're obviously still very close friends to this day.
Yeah, we made friends with, like, a lot of the cosplayers that they were made friends with. We made friends with the a couple of the prop makers. We were friends with the person who um, ran the cosplay competition that day. It was just a lot
Mm,
later that we became friends with them all. It
yeah,
was
it's
quite incredible.
crazy.
But that kicked off our con obsession, right? Because after
We got
that,
into it at the right time.
yeah,
Yeah, sorry,
because
go for it.
after that, I remembered that I'd spent even though I had a great time, I spent all day just holding your bags while people took pictures of you while you went off and talked to people while I just stood there. And so I went from, oh, you're dressing up to, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to be left out again. So we came back buzzing from that convention, didn't we? And
Yeah.
we went, there must be another convention. It's happening sometime soon. And the next convention in Scotland was one in Glasgow City. This wasn't MCM. This
No,
was,
it was Glasgow City Comic Con, I think it was
yeah, it's
called.
called Glasgow Comic
Yeah.
Con. It's just, yeah, so it's one that's held like right in the city centre. And I was adamant that I was going to do something, and I put together a Goku, Super Saiyan Goku costume, which, looking
Yeah.
back at that, was just, it was really thrown together. This is before I had any thought of making a costume or anything. It was just like, I was like, oh, I'll just get it close enough because that's cosplay, whatever.
Yeah, you had these like orange chef's trousers, I'm sure, to make it
Yeah,
work, and
they're
then
like chef's trousers
painted
and,
wellies.
yeah, with like blue Wellington boots, and a just a horrible wig, and a shirt that I just like ripped and burnt a little bit, just to get the effect. But even then, it was an absolute blast, and
Yeah.
I was, yeah, believe it or not, a pretty introverted person back then. I wasn't
I
that.
would say extremely introverted.
Thanks. Yeah, I never really, I didn't really like speaking to anyone other than Robin. I was, yeah, I found it very difficult to make friends. I think that's maybe why I got, not saying that people who play Magic the Gathering are antisocial, but I think it was just like, oh, just play this card game, and oh, yeah, well, it kind of forces you to meet people, I guess. But before that, yeah, I was quite introverted because it's tough making friends as an adult is difficult, right?
Yeah.
It's very awkward to walk up to another adult and be like, "Hi, can we be friends?" But
I've
cosplay,
literally said that to people.
yeah, yeah. You have what I call resting friendly face, though, Robyn. People don't mind you just saying something like that. In fact, they usually approach you. So it's a gift you have. But yeah, for most of us, it's can be awkward and difficult to make friends as an adult.
Yeah.
But with cosplay, and I'll never forget, obviously walking out into town center is weird because you feel a bit vulnerable because you're like, oh my god, I'm dressed up, and
Oh.
people give you funny looks, and it's very odd when you first do it, and then when you start seeing the other cosplayers, the other con goers, and you start hearing people being excited, and you start realizing the people that are looking at you, most of them, the vast majority of the people looking at you in the general public aren't being like, oh, look at those weirdos. They're usually being like, oh my god, that's Goku. I can't believe there's someone dressed like you that you just made their day.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's
Mm.
just it's realizing that, and it took me a long time to realize that. I got so nervous being in costume out in certain areas, and I wanted to hide and cover up. And God, now I'm at the stage I'll put a full cosplay on when there's no conventions on and go for a photo shoot in a public park. And that's because I've realized just what you just said, Oliver, is that when people are looking at people in costume, majority of the time they are admiring it, or they think that's really cool, or they're saying, wow, look at that. They're not being like, oh, look at those weirdos. And even if they are, those are not very nice people.
No, yeah, screw them.
Screw them.
Screw them. But I'll
You want
never
to be Goku? You be Goku.
exactly. But I'll never forget that one of the biggest moments, and I do not know who this guy is to this day, but I'll never forget the main convention hall they had. There was a staircase on one end and an escalator on the other. And it was slightly raised, and you and I were going down the escalator, and I looked across the convention hall, and there's another guy dressed in a Saiyan Goku martial arts uniform, and we spotted each other from across the hall. I'd never seen this person in my entire life, but all I saw was that someone else was dressed as Goku, and it literally locked eyes, and we just pointed at each other and smiled, and we obviously just ran to each other in the we ran to each other. We didn't embrace.
I've never been more proud in my life. I was like a proud mother watching her kid running off into the park and meeting a friend.
Yeah.
I just saw he went off and spoke to this guy, and I'm just like, oh.
But it was so easy because you're just like, you're literally wearing your fandom and your passion literally on your sleeve, when you're cosplaying. So it's so easy just to go up to someone and be like, oh my god, I love you, I love Goku, blah, blah, blah. And then you start talking about Dragon Ball Z, and you just made an instant connection with someone because they're literally wearing it on them. Like, I'm into this, I really like this thing. And from then on, I was hooked on cosplay. But then where did we go after that? Then we started going down a different rabbit hole.
So then it was CosCon. We started getting into CosCon.
Well, yeah, so CosCon was a cosplay. It was cosplay focused. It wasn't a Comic-Con. It wasn't a pop culture convention. It was literally a cosplay convention. So it was all focused on...
What they did, though, is they did this full weekend of activities where they did basically like a speed dating night, but it was for people into cosplay to make friends.
I totally forgot about that. That was the night before, right?
Brilliant. Yes, I met so many people. In fact, I think we're still close with everyone we met there.
Pretty much everyone, yeah.
Yeah, we just got drunk with a load of people. We all had to write 3 fandoms and stick them on our head and chat to each other who were also into those fandoms. And it was basically like what you just said, Oliver, about how difficult it is as a fully grown adult to go out and make friends. It was basically, go make friends. This is a full section of the pub, and it is filled with people who are into the things you're into. Go speak to them, make new friends. And it was wonderful. And then the next day we had CosCon, which was run by people who were prop makers and crafters, and they went through all these courses on making weapons out of foam, styling wigs, using sewing patterns. It was absolutely brilliant. And we met some pretty incredible people there as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, kind of top of the bills, I guess, was like Sorenzo, the guys at Sorenzo Props, or Sorenzo Studios, they're now called, out of Glasgow. What you
Yeah.
see here, creative. So it's what you see a creative on. I think that's what he goes by. Is a
Yeah.
prop maker. He now works in the television and film industry, I think. And then Cosplex, who's
Cosplex, yeah.
who was a international cosplay competitor, representing the country at the World Cosplay Summit, and that's where
I'll never
we.
forget that day meeting Lex. I was sitting next to her the night before, and I said, "Oh, are you going tomorrow?" Yeah, yeah. And I said, "Oh, are you cosplaying?" And she said, "Oh, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about putting my such and such cosplay on." And she was chatting away to me. I was like, "Oh, right, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna maybe do this." Chatting away. You would never think anything. She was just this wonderful, friendly person. Got there the next day, and she's on all the posters. And she's like, "Oh, hello, we met last night." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're this famous award-winning cosplayer. You were just sitting chatting to me the night before, like, oh yes, I might cosplay tomorrow."
But that's where we then sat, because I think it was in the What You See Here Creative, Mike from that, and he did a prop making workshop. Cosplex did a sewing workshop, and it was, we hadn't realized, oh, we can make our costumes, and I don't know why that didn't click beforehand. But I looked at it like, I already have a load of tools, you know. I work with my
Yeah.
hands anyway, and I looked at it and I was like, I could do this, you know. And then that was when we fell into the deep rabbit hole, wasn't it? Of,
Spiral.
yeah, it was a spiral of that, and that kind of took all our money and time for a long many years, didn't it? Cosplay, traveling to conventions,
And it still does.
making costumes. Well, not to the obviously not to the extent, because of
Not
things
to the
that happened in the world.
well, I'd also say not to the extent, because we got so into it and we did it for so long. We've now got to that stage within our cosplay lives where if we want to make something, we can probably make it with what's in our house now.
Yeah,
We've now gathered enough materials, enough fabrics, enough paints, and all the machines to do everything that we should be okay. But that doesn't stop me still spending a fortune on cosplay materials that I may make at some point.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and we got really into cosplay competing as well, right?
Mm.
Uh,
Oh yes,
We
so
probably,
into it.
yeah, we probably didn't like reach the zenith of what we could have done. I had great aspirations
There's
of doing.
time.
There's still
We're
time.
gonna do it.
There's still time. We actually got to the stage where we. That's the thing. It got very expensive going to all these conventions, and at that point, conventions were becoming so popular that there was one every single weekend.
Yeah.
Even just in Scotland, like if you wanted to travel across the British Isles, you could probably definitely in the summertime you could have been at two different conventions a weekend. You know, because there were that many on. I think even before the world came to an end, before that things started shutting down because it kind of split the community a bit. We were talking about this like last night, weren't we?
Yeah.
How having too many things on actually splits your community. You know, because we I think we were talking about streaming and how often we should stream. And I think if you stream a lot and every single day and you're streaming for hours, people, you know, depending on what type of streamer you are, but people will be
Hmm.
like, oh, they're streaming all the time. I'll catch them on a Wednesday, whatever. I'm busy tonight. But then another one of their fans will catch them on Thursday and another one on Monday. But if you stream like, you know, 2 days a week, you know, those three people are going to be like, oh, we'll be all there. They'll all be there together because they want to catch you instead of just splitting. I think that's what happened to the convention scene. That's what we ended up finding, is that a lot of our
Yeah.
friends, you would go to a convention and none of our friends, maybe like one of our friends was there because everyone else was like, oh, I'm not going there because I'm going to go to that one. You know, I'm not going to go to that one because that one's closer to me, or I'm working on that one, so I can't get annual leave for both of them, so I have to go to this one. And it kind of
It
split everyone up, didn't
became,
it?
yeah, it became a case of, instead of looking at the convention itself, we looked at the area and the date, and we used those to decide whether or not we'd be going and who else would be making it. Whereas before that, there'd be maybe one or two on a year that we could get to,
Yeah.
and we'd just make that work because that's when we're going to see everyone. Whereas when they started popping up every weekend, it became harder to go to all of them, but more accessible for those local to attend Comic-Con, especially schools.
Yeah, we started prioritizing the competing though, didn't we? So it wasn't so much. We actually stopped going to local cons. We went to the local con, but we didn't go to. We stopped going to like the Glasgow ones. We started coming on to London because that was the ones where the good cosplay competitions were. Even if you were just to watch, that's where everyone was coming from around Europe to compete, and so you get the highest standard. You know, allegedly the highest standard of costume making, cosplay making.
Yeah, we saw some incredible cosplays and met some really talented people at these conventions, which helped us to grow more as well as crafters.
But with that, right, we ended up going from, oh, we'll just drive down to Glasgow. It became, we'll have to like start flying down to London like 3 times a year, which became expensive, you know, and it took a lot of our time, and obviously the stress of trying to compete. I think we got to a stage where we were, you know, we started putting things off, and then we got to the stage where like, right, we're only going to do like qualifying competitions, you know, because we're not going to waste our resources, i.e. like money and making costumes and time making the costumes, if it's not going to be for a big costume competition. And then like the world ended, didn't it? Like, and there was no conventions.
The world ended. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So,
and that brings us on to which was, I suppose there's a bit of a prologue to it. But yeah, do you want to start talking about tabletop role-playing games and our obsession with that now?
Yes, of course. So when it comes to tabletop role-playing games, and specifically Dungeons and Dragons, for myself, I got into Dungeons and Dragons around about 2015, where when I started a new job, I was invited to a Dungeons and Dragons group. And I'd never played before. To be honest, I'd never actually heard of it before. And they were saying, no, come play. It'll be great fun. You can meet a load of people in the area. They're all your age. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I started playing. It was me and either 6 or 7 other guys. So it was a huge table. And I got into it then, and I had this bugbear. I think it was a fighter. I can't even remember what I was, to be honest, because it was 4th edition.
Yeah, 4th edition, right?
So I think it was, I am probably being very wrong here. At the time I said, because I was really into playing Dragon Age, I said, oh, I'm always a warrior in Dragon Age. I want to be a warrior with 2 weapons. And the DM went, right, we're going to go for this. And he basically created it for me. And we went for a bugbear. In hindsight, I should have been a bit more forceful about the fact that I didn't want to be a big, scary bugbear.
Well,
I wanted to be a pretty little elf.
Yeah, you said you quite enjoyed it.
I was about to say,
right?
I was about to say, yeah, exactly that. That once I actually got into it, I loved being the bugbear because I was a bit nervous about role playing. I'd never done it at that extent before. I'd always, whenever anything role play had come up in the past, I'd always had a script to read from. So this was something really new to me, and it made me very nervous. So being this big bugbear that didn't really care about anything meant I didn't feel the pressure about having to talk or role play. I could just, you know, be a big scary bugbear, and it was good fun.
Yeah.
But I played in that campaign for quite a while. And then once that ended, we had a bit of a break, and then, well, Oliver and you and I both started 5th edition at the same time.
Yeah, so I'll preface mine with saying I didn't play with you then, and I don't even think I was like that. I was so unaware of what I might like about D&D at that point.
Yeah.
And it might be because of my first interaction with it. I don't know, because I remember going, "Oh, I wouldn't mind having a go at it," but you were playing it, I wasn't. I think because it was obviously work friends, and I don't think I wanted to step on your toes because you were going out and obviously making friends straight after work, and because I picked you up, didn't I, when you finished playing
Yeah.
and all this. So I didn't play with you then. My first ever interaction with Dungeons and Dragons was years and years previous. Going back to what I was saying about the first getting into Magic the Gathering, first being very into the Lord of the Rings and all that fantasy stuff. There was a little toy shop where I used to live. In there, they had, because we didn't have a Games Workshop or a Warhammer shop, they had all the Warhammer stuff in there. They had board games. They had Magic the Gathering sets, and they also had Dungeons and Dragons. And I remember nobody at school had played it. My parents didn't even know what on earth it was. Um, I just remember looking at it, being like, "Oh, Dungeons and Dragons." Now, I had watched the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon because I love
Yeah.
animation. I was a fan as a kid about of the Dungeons and Dragons '80s cartoon, which was great. I had VHS cassettes of it, and I think I knew sort of the concept. I knew the world ish, and I saw it, and it would have been 3. I think it would have been third edition. It was either third edition or 3.5. I think it was third edition. In fact, now that I'm
Yeah.
thinking about it, it was definitely third edition. So
Okay.
I saw the books, and it was like the monster manual and everything, and I was like, "Whoa, what is all this?" So I bought the starter set, right? So the starter set for third edition. It was a quite good starter set, and it had loads of little tokens, which was really cool. It had like full map, like a full battle map, and it had, but there was no adventures in it. It was just encounters. So there was like a handful of encounters, and there was no, from what I can remember anyway, there was no like hand holding like fifth edition does and goes, "Oh, this is the entire story." It literally went, "Oh,
Yeah.
it plonks you in front of the dungeon, which was like encounter, which was like a room full of orcs or something and some treasure." And I got together with two of my school friends who had never had anything to do with Dungeons and Dragons. We weren't even board game players, and I was like, "Oh, we'll do it. I'll be the dungeon master." And they were like, "Okay, well, yeah, we'll give it a try." And I was like, "You only get one character. I think like there should be more characters." So they had these pre-generated characters in the game, and I just gave them like two each. And I was like, I don't know, just be two of them. Treating them, I don't know. Guess we were treating them like game pieces.
Yeah.
And just bear in mind that we're like 14 or something at this point. And so I run this game, and I had no idea what I was doing. There was no internet to be like, "Oh yeah, how do I DM a Dungeons and Dragons games?" No, I remember I had them. I went, right, okay. It's literally just a door, and I was like, right, you go to the door, and it said roll or whatever. I can't remember the actual rules, but I remember they just ran into this door, and it said, right, put the orcs here, here, and here. And I was like, oh, there's 4 orcs, and the one round of combat from the orcs just wiped out all the player characters, and so they died, and I was like, I guess that's it. We just
that was D&D,
that was Dungeons and
guys.
Dragons. Yeah, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know there was like maybe a narrative that you could push to be like, oh yeah, we'll make another character, or maybe your character is like knocked unconscious by the orcs, and no, there was nothing like that. There was no guidance like that in the books. It was just encounters. So yeah, like, but we didn't really have that much fun really. So apart from like looking at the cool art and things, it was like we just went, oh, that was shit. And yeah, we put it away, and we just never played Dungeons and Dragons. And I never played Dungeons and Dragons again until a good, yeah, a long time, like 12 years later. It was a long old time. But yeah, it was. Why don't you tell the story, Robyn, about how we started playing D&D again together?
Well, yeah, a friend of ours was a dungeon master, and she really wanted to start up a new group. And we had a trip planned between myself, Oliver, The one who was our dungeon master and
This
another
was a
friend of ours.
cosplay trip, right?
Yeah, we had a trip plan, yeah, and there was the four of us there that were going to be doing it. But this trip was actually a cosplay trip, and it wasn't to a Comic-Con, but it was to a convention that again taught you a lot of cosplay skills. So we decided, because we were going to drive there, we hired this minivan, this camper van, and we made it into this big road trip. We're going to travel there, and then I thought, well, we can play some Dungeons and Dragons.
So
So that's what.
I was put. Sorry to interrupt, but I was pushing you into it before that, though, right? Because I had started watching while we were away at conventions. I had started watching Critical Role on YouTube, which you hadn't watched it. You hadn't heard anything about it, and I was watching. This was early days Critical Role. This was when they were still with Geek and Sundry, and I'm like, oh, this is what Dungeons and Dragons can be like. So I had said to you, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons, and we had brought up to a group of our cosplay friends. Yeah, and one of them had said, I play Dungeons and Dragons. I'll run a game for you."
Yeah. So we did this trip, and we were going to play on the trip, but that never happened. We discussed it a lot, though. We discussed it in a lot of detail, and a while after that, we all got together in a pub with our character sheets, and we started playing. We did our first session. The first session for me didn't go too well. I picked a bard, and I was terrified to role play. I didn't know what I was doing. I was really confused, and I didn't understand how a lot of it worked. I went to cast Vicious Mockery, and I remember the DM saying, "Oh, well, you have to say something." And I thought, I don't know what to say. And all I remember was everyone at the table being like, "Say this, say that, say that." And I'm like, I can't. I'm so nervous.
I've forgotten how to speak.
Oh, it was such a negative feeling. And I just remember feeling like, oh, I'm rubbish at this game. I'm letting everyone down because I don't know what to say or do. And I didn't have the best first experience of 5th edition. It wasn't until after I'd gone home and changed to a monk that I felt a bit better with it. Although, in hindsight, I think if I were now, after going through that, if I were now running a game and I had a person playing for the first time and they were playing a bard, I would not put them on the spot like that. I would definitely chat to them first, see what they're comfortable with doing. And if they're not comfortable with role playing something like that, I'd be like, it's okay. You don't have to. Okay. Everyone's got their own comfort zone. You don't have to be an active role player to play a class like a bard. It comes with time, and everyone develops it at their own speed.
But, well, yeah, it was a bit unfortunate. I guess we'll talk about the story eventually anyway. But yeah, that's even though I think you say you have a negative experience. We had some good experiences because we kept at it. Like I said,
that first game was negative. The rest was really good, which I was going to say. But there was that first one.
Yeah, there was a with our first dungeon master, mine and Robyn's in 5th edition. Unfortunately, there was a bit of gatekeeping in the end. It wasn't apparent until later, and that's kind of what happened. That maybe is what was reflected in your first experience. For me, that first experience, because that's why I wanted to chime in there with like saying I'd watch Critical Role, because I totally had the Matt Mercer effect. I was like, this is how Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, this is how I'm going to play, and I just came in with like a fully fledged out character, and I was just like totally into the role play straight away. I was like, I'm going to be, although I wasn't like that confident either yet, even though I was a lot more confident than I was previous, just having social engagement. I hadn't really done any acting or anything of that kind, but I felt like I was sort of clever in the fact that I made a socially awkward character that would bumble over his words and not really pay attention to anyone and just do his own thing. So I kind of knew that it was going to be awkward, so I just made an awkward character.
Yeah, and I mean, Yeah, I mean, the campaign itself ended up being really good. There was lots of really great moments and everything. And as we got into it, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I developed a character. I came up with a voice for her, everything, and it was great. But yeah, that first experience there, looking back onto it now, what I will say is she was quite new as a DM as well. So there's that aspect of it also. But if you've got a player it's absolutely petrified to role play, don't put them on the spot and say we're going to
Well,
stop and wait till you say something.
I
So
think
scared.
I think we'll maybe do a podcast on DMing, because DMing isn't easy at all, and everyone runs a game differently, and some DMs will run the perfect game for someone, but the same person in that game might think it's the worst game. I think in
Yeah.
that situation, I'd be quite confident in saying, and yeah, if that DM ever wants to talk to us about it again, because they're not talking to us anymore. But I think even if they do, even they would admit that. I think it was like you said, it was lack of experience, dungeon mastering, but that led to gatekeeping, because that same dungeon master put us off joining the online community, because the DM had said, "Oh, yeah, you can play D&D online," and we're like, "Oh, really?" Like, "Oh, yeah, but you need to know all the gods, and you need to know all the rules, and there's like a test that you have to do to play an online game." We were like, "Oh,
Oh
really?"
yeah, it was all this. It was like they were basically being like, "You're my players, and I don't want you to go and play online somewhere." And that's what
Hey,
came out of it.
yeah,
Which,
yeah,
do you know what?
it is what it is, right?
Whatever.
It
It's
is.
fine because we did go out and play online. It wasn't by ourselves, though, necessarily. We got into online playing through a couple of different ways. I'll say my own first. It's that when I started working in a school, one of the women that I was working with, she was a teacher there, and she ran the Dungeons and Dragons club in school. And my boss on my first day of work went, "Oh, I've got someone to introduce you to, Robyn, because you and her are going to be best friends." And yes, we are absolutely brilliant friends to this day. And she ran the D&D club, and I helped her with the D&D club. And she also invited myself and Oliver to join her Dragon Age Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition game online. And we played several different games with her after
Yeah,
that, and we still play games with her to this day.
yeah, yeah. I think yes, there was one catalyst as well. So when we were playing our first campaign, we hit the cliche that is a group of working adults trying to meet up to play a campaign, and it was painful. After every session, we were like, "That was great fun. When are we playing again?" Enthusiastic. And then it's preceded by a 10-minute conversation of, "Oh, can you do that weekend? No. Can you do this one? No. Oh yeah, I'm away for 2 weeks because I'm working. I'm going abroad for work. Oh yeah, and then we're going on holiday." And then we ended up playing like once every 3 months if we were lucky.
Oh
Sometimes
my
there were
God,
six
yeah.
month gaps when we were playing, and it was difficult to really get into the hobby because we were playing so little.
Then when we were playing, it was for like really long
Because we
games.
wanted to make the
Like,
most of it, and it was too much because we'd play for like 7 hours, wouldn't we? Because we were like, right, this is the only weekend we can all do. We'll just play and play and play and play and play, and that obviously led to some. It was a learning curve, wasn't it? It was we got our
yeah, I think that's a good way of
we
saying it.
cut our teeth in some
Yeah.
interesting scenarios. So we did this. I think we'll do a podcast on D&D stories, right? I think we'll save the bulk of these stories for another podcast. I think, because
Yes, I think so.
I think there's some really good ones to get into, and there's some real cliches and new player mistakes that we made in those games, and it was only compounded by the fact that we were tired from playing and too drunk to make decisions correctly.
Okay, can I tell one of the stories?
Oh, go on
Because
then.
Oliver's wizard. So the thing with Oliver's wizard is he was this sort of old bumbling wizard called Felix, and his notes were everywhere. So his spells were just crumpled up bits of paper, and they all had red rings on them from his wine glass. So this was the character, okay? Now then we played a game that lasted like 12 hours, and at some point, Oliver and one of the other players decided to crack open several bottles of red wine.
Oh, I think we polished off 3 bottles within like 2 hours.
Yeah. The next day, we all sort of woke up a bit hungover, not sure what happened. And all we see is Oliver's notes with all the red wine stains over it. And we're like, wow, he really got into character last night.
But we had no idea. We were just like, what did we even do? And the DM wasn't even drinking. And
she was so frustrated.
Yeah, I remember her getting very frustrated with us.
Stopped.
Yeah, because we were 7 hours in and we were trying to get over this.
Oh.
It was just like a jump puzzle, wasn't it? It was just like literally a 10-foot hole.
We weren't getting it. We were too drunk. We were
new players practically. You know, it was only our like 3rd session of D&D ever, and we were like, and we had a new player with us as well. Another one of our friends joined who had never played it at all.
So like 7-8 hours into this game, we're so drunk that one of our friends he had drunk way too much. He'd literally left to go to the bathroom and come back again a couple of times. He was so drunk, and really feel like we should have just stopped there and be like, you know what, this has been great. We've had a lovely big feast. We've played 7 hours of D&D. It's like 2-3 in the morning at this point. Let's stop. But we did stop eventually. We all went home. We slept. We met up the next morning to gather all our things and decided to play for another like 4 hours.
Yeah, we did, because we were like, none of us, it was a Sunday morning, and they were like, oh, is anyone in a rush? Because we went home because we had to like sort the dog out. So we got a taxi home, and then we drove back to get our stuff the next morning and have breakfast with everyone. We're like, oh, we'll come over and have breakfast. And then we went,
yeah, we'll order waffles.
Yeah, and then we were like, what's everyone doing? And then we were like, nothing. Should we carry on playing? And then we carried on playing, and then we were way more productive the next day, weren't we?
Oh yeah, because we were like, and we came the next day, and they're like, oh, it's a 10. Okay, so it's a 10-foot puzzle, and we're like, we'll just jump over. Cool. Right, next room.
Yeah.
Guys, 10 foot.
But anyway, yeah. What I was trying to say there was our scheduling. Yeah, was so. It was so clustered. So we play a load of D&D, and then it was just no D&D for months and months. And I got to the point where I was really getting into the online community, and I was starting to like branch out. But then that's obviously where I started to realize there was like gatekeeping going on, and I hadn't even heard that term yet, but I kind of knew. I was like, oh right, I can. There's like adventurous leagues, and there's this, and people play online.
What is the term gatekeeping? I've heard it a lot, and I have a good understanding, but what's the actual definition of gatekeeping?
I don't know if I could put it into like a nice and tidy definition for you, but yeah, I could probably give you like anecdotal examples. Yeah, so things like,
go for it.
Yeah, so things like saying, if people go, oh yeah, I would like to DM, and then someone going, oh well, DMing is really difficult because you have to know all the rules, and you're expected to do, and you have to put like at least 8 hours of work into every session. You know, you're basically trying to put them off doing that thing. You know, it's not just a D&D thing. Obviously, it's a thing in pretty much every community. It's like it's very much it's very
discouraging someone from doing what you're doing by putting things in front of them and saying you have to do all this and making it seem like it's harder than it actually is.
Well, there's an example. I mentioned anime a few times. You get it a lot with. It was very common when I was growing up with anime fans, because you were like, oh, I like anime. Oh, what do you like? And you'd be like, yeah, I like Dragon Ball and Pokemon. Like, that's not real anime. Oh, you're not a real anime fan if you like that. That you know. Oh,
me staying there with my Digimon.
Yeah. Oh, do you watch the dubbed? Oh no, I always watch subbed. You know, you can't. You're not a real fan unless you watch. That's an example of gatekeeping.
Okay, yeah, I do get that. I mean, along with that DM, I did have others kind of say to me that if I watch a DM, for every hour in game, there is a minimum of 2 hours out of game prep. And I thought that was just this generic rule, and that's what happened. 2 hours for every 1 hour. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I don't have that many hours.
Well,
How do people do it? And then today, because I'm DMing this coming Sunday, I've done it once before, but this will be my first sort of decent sized group of people. And I prepped it today, and I was like, oh, this isn't that hard actually. This is kind of fun, and
yeah,
I can bullshit my way through everything. We're fine.
Yeah, but it's about encouraging, isn't it? It's just the different attitudes towards it. It's yeah,
guys, you can do it. Just do it.
Yeah, it's about welcoming people into a community, not keeping them out. That's why it's called gate. It's as if you're in front of a gate and you're not letting them in.
Oh, okay.
You get it?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So, oh no, you can't be a part of this. It's like being a part of, like, I don't know, like the Masons or something. They have secret handshakes. That's the perfect. And everyone who's not in it goes, oh yeah, they're in it. And we don't know what goes on.
You get that in the cosplay community so much as well. Yeah. People being like, oh, well, you need to have at least this much money set aside to buy this because, if you're going to do it, you need to have a decent sewing machine, or you need to have this, or you can't just buy cosplay. That's not really cosplay. You get all those people.
Yeah.
And
it's
I'm the opposite. I'm like, do you believe you're the character? Then you are the character. You're doing it.
Well, yeah, I think it just comes from an old school way of thinking, whereas now I think it's better to have, I just think in life and in business and in communities, I think having the idea of, a rising tide raises all boats type thing is just a better idea, build your, if you're building up, especially with, it's just easier with the internet because people aren't fighting each other for time anymore. You watch TV, and it used to have to decide what to watch, what soap opera I'm going to watch, and they would compete with each other, or BBC and ITV would compete with each other. But now with the internet, you can have a group of streamers, and they can all be streaming, and there can be hundreds of them, but you can all build each other's streams up because you're not in direct competition with each other, because there's plenty of for everyone. There's plenty. You can all broadcast at the same time.
That's the thing. There's that understanding with everyone that if we're all in this community together, we all want to do well, and the way to do well is to build one another up, and is to show that support and to make those connections and those friends and those relationships that in the end up meaning so much more than the actual fandom itself, because it's those relationships and those bonds that you make along the way of discovering how to play D&D, Magic the Gathering, how to cosplay, and our newest thing, which of course is going to be LARP. And even though we are in the early stages, we've already made friends online, and I'm already looking forward to meeting these people in person at our first event. And yeah, it'll be great. We'll be doing the LARP at the same time, but I'm just really looking forward to meeting these people.
Yeah, no, definitely. God, yeah, we keep going off on tangents. So what I was saying was
actually bringing it around to LARP.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely get to LARP, but I do want to finish the point about the games and the schedules. Yeah, so, and why we started playing more, so that we weren't playing enough. So Robyn had already said, yes, she started an online game with one of her work colleagues. I was very much like, right, I want to play more Dungeons and Dragons because I'm not just getting enough of it, because I was into the community, and realizing that I've maybe been gatekeeped, if that's a adverb. I prefer gatekeeped. There we go. I'm gonna coin that phrase.
It's fine if you prefer that.
Patent pending.
I'll just silently correct you in the background.
It's fine. It's not what I do. I usually loudly correct. So yeah, I started looking for games online. I found games online. Started playing pretty much one campaign, and then we were still actually running the first campaign as well, and then the world came to an end. So then our in-person campaign went online. So I was playing in games with you and your work friend. I was playing in a game. You were playing in two games. Weren't you? You were playing
I
on
was
a
playing in a
Monday.
lot of games.
You were playing on a Monday, a Friday. So
I
between
was
us,
playing several games.
yeah. So there was a point during
Yeah.
the COVID lockdown where we were online
I was
playing
in
Dungeons
5
and
at one
Dragons.
point.
Yeah, we were playing 5 days a week of Dungeons and Dragons, and that is where our obsession, like, just obviously kicked off. And because you, when we first ever started playing, obviously you said you didn't have an amazing experience. I definitely got the impression from you and the other players, because I already did a lot of research beforehand and knew what the player sheets were. I'd already watched a load of Critical Role, and I learnt a lot of the rules from that as well. So I knew what a lot of the attributes were. I definitely got the impression from you. Tell me if I'm wrong. I got the impression from you and the other player that was playing with us is that you just didn't want to do the character creation because it felt like homework, and you weren't interested in character creation at all. You just wanted to sit down and play.
That a little bit different for me. Character creation was my favorite part because I loved the idea of creating character. Even though we've said advice to new people and new players, do a pre-made sheet. To be honest, I would have hated doing a pre-made sheet. Creating the character was my favorite part.
Really?
What I struggled with was understanding understanding the terminology and things along with it. I would have really appreciated creating my character with the DM there the entire time and actually helping me through it, because instead it was learning a lot of terminology, because I was like, no, I know what I want my character to do. I know what I want them to look like. I want to build everything up about them. But there was a lot of things that was hard to understand. I do not learn very well by reading it in a book. I really struggle with that type of learning. Every class I've played, even I've played a lot of monks and a lot of bards. When it's come to their subclass and choosing their college and so on, I have read very little into it until I've had to use the abilities in the game, because that's how I learn. And it's just personal to me, okay? I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying personal to me, I learn by doing it. And I did end up in for quite a bit of a shock with the bard side of it, because I didn't realize that I had to role play so heavy so quickly, and it was very scary.
I don't think that was anywhere in the rules though, and well, I'm
that's
telling you, it's
what
not
I'm
in the rules.
thinking. It
It's not
wasn't in the rules, and
Yeah,
I feel like I
rules.
shouldn't have had to be pushed into that situation. I feel like it should have been a case of, oh, don't worry, yeah, so you're doing vicious mockery, so let's just say you say something like really mean to this person and their feelings are hurt, roll your damage. That's what I feel like should have happened.
We can definitely, yeah. I feel like this is definitely a whole nother podcast, I think, on DM etiquette and different ways you can do things. I think we definitely need to
we're going to do that after my first proper experience at DMing.
Yeah,
because then I've got some experience to talk about, and you can tell me if it was shit or not.
Well, yeah, we can. Well, we'll definitely talk about the game, because that's what I kind of want to do with this podcast. Is we'll if we do it weekly, and we're just going to talk about what we did that week, and yeah, because we're doing a lot. But to finish, I really want to get this. I really want to get our origin up to date for this podcast. So we'll go back to, we were playing a lot online, right? Mm-hmm. Then we got to a tipping point, didn't we? Where, well, I think both of us did. I'm not going to speak for you, but I know I definitely got to a tipping point where I was playing too many games, only because I didn't have enough time to invest in every game. Because every game was like, oh, I need to get ready for this game tonight. And it got to a point where I wasn't excited for any actual one of them. I enjoyed playing every one of them, but I wasn't like looking forward to playing any one of them, because every day was a D&D game. But not only that, I couldn't mentally keep up with the storylines of all of them. So, and a lot of, I think because everyone was the same, everyone just kind of showed up because everyone was doing similar things. So people would just show up, and we'd, ask about and get nothing done in every single session. So we were just playing D&D every night when nothing was happening, every single night. I don't know about you. I don't know if you felt the same.
I did, but a little different. I basically became that overtired toddler who had overtired little kid who had way too many hobbies and wanted to do them all and didn't want to quit any of them, but was completely exhausted from all of them. I didn't want to leave a single game. And every single one of my games was on camera. And every game required around about an hour beforehand of me doing my makeup and doing my hair and going on to play. One of my games was at level 10 or 11, something like that. It was quite high up, and it took quite a lot of thought beforehand and a lot of prep just to play the game. And it did get to a point where I had to sit down and seriously think, right, I need to drop some games. It's getting too much. And I ended up dropping several. One of them was coming to the end anyway. So that one came to the end and closed, and it was fine. Sort of like our Dragon Age one was sort of ending. So that took a game out. I had to leave another game because it was just going so late at night and was just taking so much energy. And then slowly my games reduced. And then it got to a much more manageable amount. But I will admit, I miss having the 5 games a week. I loved it so much. I enjoyed doing it, and I enjoyed the social aspect of it. I absolutely love doing it. But I feel like stepping a little bit away from D&D, I feel like it maybe didn't have the best effect on you and I, Oliver, because it got to the point where we were both out of work every day. We'd come home each night, we'd be playing games. Some of those games would be together, so we'd see each other on a screen, and some of them would be apart, so we wouldn't see each other. And we'd be playing till late at night, so we'd basically see each other really quickly for some dinner, and we'd be off to our own rooms to play games. And I think that had a real negative effect after a while anyway, because we just weren't getting any time together. It was all consumed by games. And I think it's important in any relationship to be able to just have that little time together, even if it's one night a week. But it got a bit much, I think.
Yeah, well, that's what I kind of want to I wanted to talk about next, actually, a little bit. Maybe before that, we had started because our friends who we had made through different games, some of them were into streaming Dungeons and Dragons online, on Twitch and other platforms, and it's something I think both of us had looked at and gone, yeah, we would like to do that, because we're very much, what we loved about D&D, right? Or is the role playing, isn't it? So
yes, I know. Away from that first experience, since then, I think I've become very much, I just want to role play. I just want to be a completely different character with a different accent, a different cadence, a different everything, and get right into it. And I want the world to watch while I do it. So yeah,
I think we should definitely have
it.
Yeah, because I mean we've already been talking for an hour and 23 minutes now, and there's so much I wanted to get to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see, I told you making a podcast would be easy. And yeah, I did want to talk about like how our role play has affected us as people as we've made all these different characters. I think that's definitely something for another podcast. I think we'll talk about that then. But I do want to finish up by like bringing us to the present day. So we started streaming with some friends, and we made the Mind Players brand with us and 3 other friends, and we started streaming. We had guested, you had guested on another channel, hadn't you? So I think we had streamed like before we had done it. I think I think for me, actually, the Mind Place was the first time I'd ever actually streamed online playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, so sorry. The first time I had streamed was through Mercy Road, which is a 24-hour charity game. And I streamed for the second last game of that. That would have been a couple of weeks before Mind Players, because that was my thing that I announced at the end of it. So that was before it. And that was my first experience of streaming, because I know you and I had guested on a friend's channel, on the Hype Goblins channel, but I believe that was after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at this point we'd started streaming, and I think we really love just creating content in that way. And because our characters were not only there just entertaining our friends, they were then entertaining an audience as well.
Yeah.
I know definitely for me, that's where I definitely upped my game when the cameras were on. It was, I've gone from this person that Robyn so kindly pointed out that was very introverted to being someone who...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that as a negative.
No,
I
it's
meant
okay.
because you've done
it's
so
okay.
well.
It's growth, I can take the criticism. It's okay.
I know. I notice your growth as a person. You were once introverted, and you have become a much more extroverted person, and you've done that yourself.
Yeah, and it's definitely down to you, a lot of it, because I think that's why we're going to be talking about cosplay and Dungeons and Dragons, and then that's why we're getting to live action role play, because it's a combination of the two. But I probably wouldn't have been into Dungeons and Dragons if not for cosplay, and I wouldn't be confident enough to role play on camera or in person without cosplay either. And because we like creating we like creating that content, then we were talking about, because we talked about the podcast already, like we said at the beginning, and it was always something I had talked about, being like, we need to make our own brand, we need to do our own branding, where we can make videos and we can talk about stuff and our experiences, because we talk about it anyway, and we enjoy doing it again in front of the camera, and we enjoy the communities, and we enjoy making those connections. So that's kind of the origin of not just Dungeons and Dragons, that's the origin of Two Having to Roll, right?
I don't think I could have said it better, honestly, Oliver. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
we've discovered so much together, and we would like to share that with everyone, and we want all of you to discover the next stage with us. I mentioned LARP a couple of times. We are going to be sharing everything with you as we learn it ourselves. So you will get to see the mistakes that we make, and you will get to learn from those mistakes, hopefully. And maybe some of you guys might be encouraged enough to come and try it yourselves, whether that's cosplay, LARP, Dungeons and Dragons, or something totally different from all of that.
And we just wanted something we can share, just what we like to do, it's so at the minute, we're going to be making tabletop role-playing content and Dungeons and Dragons content, which leads on to our next biggest project that we're going to be doing, is and leading, circling back to what you had said about spending time together. When we were streaming and playing lots of games, we actually set aside time together to play Dungeons and Dragons just one-on-one.
Yes.
And quite honestly, no, this is no slight and no offense meant to any of my DMs or any of my friends that I play or any of the games I've been in, but the games I played, just you and me, have been my favorite Dungeons and Dragons games.
Yes, ever. I would say that as well, actually. That's been just my favorite. It's just you and I, and we just, there's no pressure, and we just have fun. And honestly, guys, I can't wait to show you guys this, because it's absolutely incredible. And
'Cause, yeah, we are going to be.
Hopefully,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we need to just say, we're going to be making a streamed Dungeons and Dragons campaign. It will
Yes.
be available. So it will be available on the podcast. Whether we have it in a different feed, I am not entirely sure. I think it's just going to be on the same feed. I think we'll just release it as a podcast, as an audio podcast on this channel, on this show
Yeah.
to start out with. So we're hoping to get that out to you beginning to middle of February.
Yes.
Because building again a 2-person D&D campaign, from what we've learned, is going to make things a lot easier anyway, because of things like scheduling. A 2-person, it's not going to be exclusively two-person. We are we are definitely going to be having
Definitely.
guests on, so there will sometimes be 2, you never know, maybe 3 players, but it's going to start off with it's going to be a solo. Let's not say just 2-person D&D. Let's say that it's going to be just a 1-character story. So the focus is going to be on the one player character, and that's how we're going to play it. So yeah, have a look forward to that we've got coming up for you. We're super excited about it.
Yeah, no, I cannot wait to share this with you guys. We, of course, will be keeping you up to date in a lot of different forms. For those of you who solely will be listening to podcasts, we will keep you up to date through our podcasts. Outside of that, we also have our wonderful Discord community, our Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, all there for you guys to come and join us and be part of this new venture with us.
Yeah, I mean, we so currently it hasn't started. So if you're listening to this and the campaign hasn't started, we are already currently streaming regularly on Twitch, @2have_2roll, and that's the number 2, and it's roll as in roleplay, ROLE. So that's @2have_2roll on Twitch. We're usually streaming every Thursdays, just doing a Q&A currently with me and Robyn, just doing a chatting format. And I'm playing some video games on there as well. So yeah, make sure you head over there and catch us on there. Okay, Robyn, we did it. We did it. We made a thing.
We did it.
Yeah, we made a thing. Let's hope there wasn't any problems in recording. We can get it out to these lovely people.
Yes, I hope so, because this has been wonderful. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening. And yeah.
And cheers. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers anyway. Bye.